Hello, everyone. Let's try this again. Sometimes Facebook doesn't always cooperate with me. So I am so excited to be here with you today. This is a really important topic on how to create a new reality for yourself for 2020. So we're going to be talking about a couple different pieces of really releasing distortions, talking about how we typically get into survival mode and all of the stress hormones and that whole cascade. And also the element of really creating and expanding a new reality for yourself. So the reason why this whole Facebook Live came to fruition, and as a lot of you know, a lot of my downloads come through meditation. But my coach actually asked me, and it got me thinking yesterday about what is the overarching energy. And in my mind, I use, the channel. What is the channel that I'm really offering people? And I really tapped into it, and the answer came immediately. And that word is expansion. That is really what I'm offering in the Ascension retreat, the immersion experience there, as well as my Quantum Queen work. All of it falls under the umbrella of expansion. And that's really, the channel that I bring people into is really about helping them shed and release their limited self. And we'll talk about that today, releasing distortions and all of that, so that they can really step into being a powerful creator. And when I say expansion, I'm talking about energetically, right? So how can you expand your channel, your energetic channel, so that you are a powerful creator? And I see Paula, a couple other of you are joining. Awesome. Maybe you're on your lunch break watching this. Al, how are you? Just write a comment and say hi so I know that you're here. Give me a little love, give me a little heart emoji so I know that you are in the room with me as we dive deep into this today. So if you're distracted, maybe now is not a good time to watch this. Really be present with this conversation, because that's the energy that I'm inviting you into. Kelly, nice to see you. Awesome. See, it's funny. Sometimes it shows people joining, but I can't see everybody. So I know that there's people watching. And Kelly, thank you for confirming that, because your name didn't pop up. So now I know that there's some kind of delay in Facebook. So anyway, so like I said, the way that this came to me was through a question being asked. And so I really want to hone in on the dichotomy of really how we operate in the world. And so there's this survival mechanism that we operate in, and then there's the creation space. So I want to go into more about that and how you can start to receive higher frequencies, different things that you're putting out into the energetic realm, the quantum field. You might be setting intentions and putting things out there. And so really understanding the whole, quantum realm and how to navigate that. So we typically think of, energy as something that, and some people feel it, some people don't feel it, but we don't really think of it much. We think about the physical reality of what we're living in every day. So we think about what we need to do and, the immediate things that are calling for our attention. So that's really living in the 3D, third dimensional, everything is physical, the cause and effect, all of that. Now, the quantum realm is really where we get to play and we get to create, because what happens in the third dimension, Marilee, nice to see you. What happens in the 3D is that we are tied to these old patterns. We're tied to survival mechanisms. Hi there. We are tied to our old identity of really how we were raised and what that looked like for us. Because I always talk about this chain that our thoughts every day create our emotional state, right? And so for example, say that you wake up every day feeling anxiety. There was a thought that actually preceded that. So you have a thought that creates an emotional response, and it's a feedback loop. Your emotion tells you, I feel anxiety, then it creates the thought again, right? So it's this loop. You're looping in and out. And if you have that long enough, it creates a mood. If you have that long enough, it creates a temperament. And then you just kind of say, I'm an anxious person after a while, and that creates your identity. And so we're constantly, unless we're aware of this, we are creating our experience every single day from lower levels of fear and survival. So what happens is thoughts are actually energy. So you're putting out these thoughts, these unconscious thoughts out into the field every day. And it might not even be apparent to you until you watch something like this, until you come onto this channel. Amparo, how are you? Margarita. So it's really about being aware of the reality that you're currently creating. And by the way, I am not judging anybody's reality, because sometimes we really don't know what we're creating. So right now, everything in your world has been created through your thoughts and through your consciousness. So your consciousness is like a field. And I always say it's like seeing life through a certain lens. So if you're seeing life through the lens of stress and, these lower energy states of maybe resentment or anger or not trusting, that is what you will perpetuate in your physical reality, because everything starts off as energy. You started off in the womb as energy and then became a physical entity. And that's what I mean about the 3D is we typically just look at life out of the 3D lens of like, well, everything's physical and this is just how it is. But what I want to invite you into is this deeper conversation of how much power you actually have through your thoughts, through, everything that you create right now. So what happens typically is that we have a thought, it creates an emotion, which internally turns on stress hormones in our body. So we're feeling guilty about something, and that is running your life. So you've been, kind of conditioned to have that wire for you. Every time that something happens, you feel guilty. And it's almost like, and Joe Dispenza, who I love and study all the time, he calls it an addiction. We become addicted to this flood of chemicals in our brain that get triggered when we think a guilty thought. And so it's just like, for example, say that you eat or you drink 2 cups of coffee a day. Let's use that example. Let's say that you drink 2 cups of coffee a day, and then all of a sudden you take it away. What happens? You feel all of the symptoms, right? You feel maybe irritable. I know I would, because I love my coffee. That is my one vice. But you feel all of these symptoms because that's what you've been addicted to, that chemical. And so the body naturally wants it again. So what happens, to correlate that example, what happens when you're used to feeling guilty all the time and your subconscious mind looks around, well, where did it go? Where, I'm so used to this drug. I'm used to those guilty, hormones that flood your cells in your body. Well, then your subconscious looks for things in your external environment to amplify the feeling of guilt, right? Because if you're addicted to it, you need to raise those levels again. So that's really how you create your reality, and how powerful that subconscious mind is, that it knows it's scanning your environment at all times. Well, what happened? What happened to the feeling of guilt? I was so used to that. So really rewiring your brain and working with the subconscious. I know I always talk about this, but it's so imperative that we realize that our lives are being run by the thoughts we think and the emotions we feel, and it creates that cascade, right? So it's the thought creates the emotion, turns on hormones, turns on genes, and can eventually create disease. That is how disease is created. And there's a model called the stress diathesis model, which shows we are vulnerable in certain areas. And I'll just give a quick example. For me, I, grew up in a very critical household. So I was always very constricted in my solar plexus chakra. So I developed an eating disorder because I was so used to having the same thoughts create those emotions of like, I can't be myself and I'm guilty and, self-hatred, quite honestly. And so that created, after years and years and years of being conditioned that way, and then after a while, you don't even need that external person, in your environment. You have the toxic thoughts. So it's almost like your brain is programmed a certain way, And then you can even go away from the environment and the thoughts will still be there. And I know a lot of people can relate to this, especially if you've had, situations. And I know a lot of this comes up around parents who were maybe very critical, and you yourself now create these thoughts because it's just there. It's in your programming. And so what happens when we have consistent, we're flooded with that stress response, your body will either break down, and in my case, it was an eating disorder and I had symptoms, physical symptoms, and sometimes it'll be a physical symptom of anxiety. And so that's how this mind-body connection really works, and how, your thoughts, subconscious or otherwise, do dictate what you create in your reality. So you might be saying, okay, well, how do I fix this? How do I actually change this? And there's a lot of different ways that you can start to reprogram your mind. And there's, in my Quantum Queen program, I talk about this all the time. There's thoughts, emotions, beliefs, identity, and I give tools for all of those things on how to shift, because it really is a chain reaction. If you can break one of those, and change the way you feel about yourself. I do an elevated emotion meditation in one of the weeks that, in the Quantum Queen program, that can help you start to shift and change your internal chemistry, because that's really what's happening. Is we're so used to feeling those emotions. And I would love to hear, just if anybody can relate, I'm sure all of us can relate to this, write in the comments like, yeah, I always feel guilty, or I feel anxiety all of the time. I know that's a big one for a lot of us, because I would love to kind of walk you through this and help coach you through it. And so the other way that this can manifest, the stress response, is through different aspects of your life. So you might be creating a business idea, but you're finding that you're coming from this lack space, right? So you're wanting to kind of fill up things in your physical environment because you're coming from that empty cup, right? You're like, well, it's not in my physical environment, so now I have to create content or do something externally to create it. And when you're creating from lack, it's a contracted space. So that's the opposite of expansion, which is what we'll go into in a couple of minutes. But if you're, and I see this a lot with business owners, we're creating from lack, and you have so much more power if you're expanded. And so that's really what I invite people into. And I'm so crystal clear on it right now, is that is the channel that I'm inviting you into. And, the Ascension immersion or the Quantum Queen, it's to help you expand. That's really, the crux of it all, is to help you get out of this lower fear state of, maybe you have different beliefs around, like, I was always brought up, I'm not good enough, or I can't be seen. I'm afraid to be seen because I don't like my body. Trust me, I get that one. I've been there too. And you can also do all of these internal and external practices to shift, to clear resistance, to allow yourself to literally become an empty vessel. That is really when you have the space to create. And I always say this, when you have an empty vessel and you have things and you're empty, you can create everything, because that's pure potential right there. And there's nothing standing in the way. So really, a lot of what I first take people through in my programs, any program that they do or anything, even in the Ascension immersion, we're going to be doing releasing work first, because there are so many distortions that, I talk about, as far as, the lens of how you see life, right? So you might look at life and say, I can't trust people. And that will show up in various different aspects of your life. And if that belief is anchoring you to your past and holding you back, you won't go for new experiences. You won't be able to trust somebody if you have a business and you're trying to hire people. So all of these distortions are the lens that we're seeing life through. And when we can clear them and see the truth of what's really there, and maybe even where that thought came from, they're all just thought forms, but it's energy that's anchoring you to a grid from the past. And so a lot of the work is really releasing that and realizing, bringing truth to, okay, is this a distortion, or is this something, like, what did I make this mean from my past? And that's a lot of that shedding and releasing work that we do at the beginning. And then it's really juicy because you get to create whatever you want. When you're stripped down, when you don't have any distortions in the way, when there's no resistance, imagine what you can activate in yourself. And so that second day of the Ascension immersion is really activating your divine gifts because nothing is in the way. We're literally dismantling all of these projections, all of these distortions around maybe what your past identity was and how you see yourself, how your subconscious mind sees yourself. Because I will tell you, if your subconscious sees your physical self, say that you're disgusted by yourself or you hate yourself or you have all of these really deep attachments to the past, you can't expand because you're in this lower limited self. And so when you shed that and you realize, wow, like that is actually what I thought of myself, you get to create this whole new aspect. You get to tap into your higher self. You get to create a whole new world for your reality. And that's honestly the most exciting part, is really seeing, wow, there's nothing in the way. There's literally nothing holding me back. What can I create? And that's actually the experience. The reason why I do this is because I've lived through this myself, and I've had many ego deaths throughout my journey. And the last one being when I went to a retreat in September, just really like doing a lot of deep breath work and transformation work to shed and purge a lot of those lower beliefs that I still had about myself and my worth and how I contributed to the world. Because I fully believe that if you are on this planet, you have a divine purpose. So what you need to be focusing on is first releasing that old stuff, then activating your divine purpose, and then integrating it, right? So you have your old self, the old limited self, you purge and get rid of all that gunk, right? Then you become more light. You get to connect with source, because when we're so enmeshed in like the drama and the lower vibration, the matter, the material, the physical, then we can't create from a place of expansion. So when you open yourself up, you're number one, you can connect with source much more easily. And that's how you start to get downloads. Like if you hear, a lot of the guidance and a lot of these videos I do because I'm getting downloads. So you get to have sharper clarity around, your divine connection, and you get to create you get to co-create. So you have, God or divine masculine or source, whatever you want to call it, as your backbone. And then you get to be the vessel for the empty vessel for, okay, like, what do you want me to create here? What does that look like? And that is what happened to me when I kind of purged all that stuff from Creatrix Matrix. I went at that retreat. I was able to birth something new. I was able to completely surrender and open myself up to creating the Quantum Queen. And that just took off because it was a divine creation that was not at all from my own consciousness. And so what I'm talking about here is really deep stuff. So hopefully everybody is still here on board. Oh my gosh, I didn't even see all these comments. I'm working with Christina and this is working, starting to have some fundamental shifts. Amazing. I'm literally feeling this expansion in my thoughts. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Starting to feel better and more excited. Absolutely, Marilee. And that is what happens when you start to really release. Sometimes you go through this period of, there's some resistance, or there's like these thoughts or things that come up and you don't even know that they were there, right? But when you clear that, when you kind of purge and let that go, you're able to create a new reality for yourself. You think new thoughts, you feel new emotions in your body. And this is such deep work that anybody can use. And if you're looking to make a big impact in the world, you need to be addressing the energy. That is everything. We are actually we're 99.999% energy and 0.0001 physical. So everything is energy, and working with this quantum work can really accelerate the path and help you to connect to your divine mission. And that's really what I'm offering you into in Ascension. Kelly Kane, so interesting. What do you think is interesting? What aspects? I'm just curious to see. And I welcome any other comments as well. I think that this is so important. This is so essential, because if we're not aware of how much we're in survival mode and we're grasping and we're feeling anxiety and we're either numbing it out, and a lot of people do this through constantly checking their phone, or maybe smoking or eating, or just keeping busy. I know a lot of people, it's acceptable to keep busy, and we're like, oh, I'm so busy, I can't. And that's not in a space of creation. So and again, this is not from a judgment space. It's just the reality of, okay, what space am I creating from here? Am I creating from lack and survival and striving? Or what do I need to release in order to then get into this creative space? And there are so many different techniques that I use with my clients. I mean, there's so many that can help you to release gently and in the most loving way with support. And it's miraculous to see what comes out of it. Like, I have somebody right now who has been working with me for the past 8 months. She not only did she let go of a lot of energetic stuff, she actually released 35 pounds, no diet, no anything. And she shed all of that, had the space to create, and now she's creating a nonprofit. And it's incredible what people create out of these transformation programs. So I would just love to hear your thoughts, even if you're watching the replay or have any questions for me. I know we kind of went through a lot, and for those of you who know me, I don't do surface level stuff. I go deep. So anybody who's watching this, you're probably like, whoa, what did I jump onto here? But this quantum work is really powerful, and I've seen a shift in myself. Like I said, I have a science background, and I'm such a nerd around that, but I love distilling it down so that it's actually, you're able to understand, okay, this is what's happening. And we don't need to go into all of these fancy quantum models. It's really just about breaking it down and seeing how it applies to your own life. So if anybody has any questions, I am an open book. I would love to answer or support you in any way. But otherwise, I hope that you have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you soon.